Hey guys, this is Jimmy from Primer is Best. I'm in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I'll kind of show you briefly where we're at. Pigeon Forge is in East Tennessee. It's real close to Gatlinburg. It's a big tourist attraction, and we're here for a church convention. This is where they have the spring and fall rod run and all kinds of events if you're interested. Fall of the year. I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes, and I have a video called, I'm trying to remember the exact title name, but it's called Friends. What Friends? With question marks. And I'm talking about divorces, ex-wives, and their their boyfriends, whatever they had going on while I was married to them. How I met my first wife. This is what this video is about. How I met my first wife. My first wife was, let me show you. See one of those poles there? The first time I ever met my first wife, she was standing beside a pole like this in front of a store that she had just been fired from. And I found her standing there crying. I was going to buy 8-track. 8 tracks, remember 8 tracks if you're an older guy like me. I'm 68. I met her when I was probably 22, 23 years old. She was 18 or 19 at the time, and she was crying by the pole, and I couldn't figure out what's going on. So on my way out of the store, sorry guys, on my way out of the store, she was still standing there crying. I said, is there something I can do to help you out or do something for you? And she said, I just got fired. And I said, oh, okay. I said, you haven't moved from here. I said, do you need a ride home or something? I said, do you live very far? Because I had a car I was driving. I drove to that store. And she said she'd like to have a ride. So I gave her a ride to her house. And in the meantime, we got to talking. And I said, would you like to go out on a date? This was on this happened on a Friday or a Saturday. I can't remember. So anyway, I said, you get cleaned up. I said, I'll get cleaned up, and we'll go out on a date, maybe see a movie. That's one of my favorite things to do, is go watch a movie and go get something to eat afterwards. I hope you can hear me over all this traffic. So she agreed, and we went out, and we started dating, And anyway, we dated for a pretty good while. And I thought we got to know each other pretty well. I thought I did. But anyway, we were married almost 3 years. Had a big church wedding, the white gown and all that other kind of stuff. And we were going to rent an apartment. That's the whole time we were together. We rented. Never owned anything. I had a 1974 Pontiac Grand Am. It was a really sharp car, and she didn't have a car. I was working full time, and she got a full-time job at another department store. So we were poor as dirt. I mean poor. My goodness. Every 2 days I was going to the laundromat to wash our clothes. We didn't have many clothes. Point is, before we got married, I said, do you have any bills that, outstanding bills? I said, we need to pay those off if you have any. I said, I've got a car payment, the Pontiac. And I had a piece of property, a lot, to build a house on. I had that. So I had 2 payments myself. And she said, no, I don't have no payments, I said, oh, okay. I said, I just want to make sure. I said, it's going to be tough. Us just starting out, starting from scratch, buying trash cans, trash bags, lunch bags, plates, all this other stuff. Just imagine starting all over. She said, no, I don't have any bills. She lied. She had a bill that was like $1,500 that she owed at that department store. She bought clothes and stuff. And I said, why didn't you tell me before we got married? We could have both knocked it out and paid it off, And that was the first mistake. And, looking back on the whole situation, like I said, we were married almost 3 years. And, I was working full time. I wound up buying a little old bitty, is a 1963 Ford Fairlane 4-door car, just to get back and forth to work. So I was going to let her drive the Pontiac back and forth to work. It's a pretty nice car, and I was going to drive that old Ford back and forth to work. While we were married, we had moved 3 times. Every year seemed like we were moving. My dad came over when we were living in an apartment downtown, and I was going to the laundromat every 2 days, and I asked him, I said, can you help me? We were trying to fix up the apartment. We got a carpet shampooer, cleaned up everything, all that kind of stuff. And they said, if you make any improvements on the apartment, let us know. It's owned by a company. So I told him, I said, we've shampooed the carpet, cleaned up the place pretty good and all this other kind of stuff. And they said, okay. So they knocked off on the rent. Well, they turned right around and went up on the rent because we had done all that. And I asked my dad, I'd had no plans of leaving there. It was convenient for both of us. It was real close to her work and very close to my work. I didn't want to have to travel very far because we didn't have no gas money for that. So I asked my dad, I said, would you care to help me? Because my dad's a lot smarter than I am. He was an electrician and all this stuff, but I wasn't. Nothing. I've always been a manual labor person myself. So my dad came over and he wired up some, for a washer and dryer. They didn't have that at that apartment. And I told the people, I should have learned my lesson, but I didn't. I told the people, I said, that owned the apartment, I said, my dad and I had, run wires and, plumbing and all that stuff for a washer and dryer setup. And they said, good. And so they knocked off on the rent for that month. They went up again. The rent got so high that I couldn't afford to, sorry, somebody's mowing. I couldn't afford to stay there. I mean, it was just so expensive. And so we had to move. So we went from one extreme to another. And we were, instead of living downtown, we moved out to the country. Found a little old cheap place. It was a house, but half of it was burnt. It caught on fire. Half of it was burnt. The other half, they were redoing. They said we could live there and, rent there. So we had a garden and all this other stuff, trying to grow our own food, save money that way, blah, blah, blah. And we lived there for a while, and one day the landlord came up to me and he said, Jimmy, he said, I kept the yard mowed, all that stuff. He had a lawnmower and I kept the yard mowed. It looked really, really good there, even though half the house was gone, burnt. It wasn't a pretty place, but it was a place to live, you know what I mean? So we lived there, and I liked it there. It was out in the country. There's a big old barn in the back, that belonged to the landlord. They were really nice folks, but the landlord came up to me one day and he said, Jimmy, said, my daughter and her ex-husband are getting back together. They don't have a place to live. They said, I hate to do this to you. Said, you're a really good tenant. You always pay your rent, and you've never caused any problems, which we didn't. We were real quiet. I said, he said, you're going to have to move. Said my wife's ex-husband and her are getting back together, and they don't have a place to live. I said, okay. And as bad as I hated to move, we moved. So we moved to an entirely new town, a town not far from where I worked at. And so we moved there. And I got the trading. When I say trading, my first wife and I were doing business at a local gas station that belonged to a friend of mine. And, so we gave our business to him. Every payday we'd fill up with gas and, just get our groceries and stuff like that. I was working second shift. My wife at the time was working, days. She worked at the department store, and I worked second shift, 10 hours a day. So we done that, and there was a mechanic at the gas station my buddy owned, and he we got to be pretty friendly and stuff like that, friends. And I'll say, let's just call him Tony, okay? Tony. I'll use the name Tony. That's the mechanic. Whenever I had, had to get my little Ford car worked on, or the Pontiac or something like that, Tony would be the man I would go to, because his filling station wasn't, mechanic place at the filling station wasn't far from where we lived, So it worked out good. Well, I got to noticing, my wife, my first wife, I got to saying, well, let's invite Tony over for spaghetti. Let's invite Tony over to do this, do that, And I said, oh, okay, because, I liked him too. But it was really, guys, I don't know what's wrong with me. I never pick up on nothing. I just never do. I'm the last one to find out about anything. So, we was inviting Tony over for a lot of things, eating. Tony wasn't married, wasn't dating anybody, nothing like that. He's by himself. And, my wife was all the time bringing that up. Why don't we ask Tony to come over? Tony. Well, one Saturday night, now remember, I'm an older guy, okay? One Saturday night, my wife and I, we didn't have money really to go anywhere. I'm being truthful with you. We just barely had enough money to make ends meet. And that was barely. So, remember, I had a car payment, a land payment, and unbeknownst to me, she had a now $1,500 doesn't sound like much, but back in the 70s, you could get a new car for like $3,500. $1,500 is a lot of money back then, especially when you're not making much money like me. And you're having to rent U-Hauls and stuff. We moved once a year for some reason. Circumstances beyond our control. Getting back to Tony, my wife, one Saturday night, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to grab a shower, and Saturday evening, late afternoon, I said, I want to grab a shower, and we'll watch a little TV, maybe drink some sweet tea or something, something like that. And I come out of the shower. Sorry, guys. I come out of the shower, and I had a towel wrapped around me, and the TV was on. My wife was sitting on the couch, and I said, wonder what comes on tonight, because I was just wondering if she'd look through the TV guide or something. And she said, I want a divorce. I said, what? I was kind of grinning because I thought it was ridiculous. I thought she's joking around with me. But I said, what? And she said, I want a divorce. Jimmy, I want a divorce. I said, well, what's going on? What happened? And she said, I just want a divorce. And so that puzzled me. Remember, I was working second shift. Sometimes those shifts are bad for marriages. Or speaking for myself. So, sorry guys, there's some loud vehicles here. So time rocked on. She went and found an attorney, and I kept telling her, I said, what's wrong? What's wrong? She never would say. She said, I'm just sick of you. I'm sick. I just want a divorce. I told her, I said, because of my religious beliefs, I can't divorce you. I said, I can't. I said, till death do you part. And I said that a couple times, and then she looked at me and she said, if you don't divorce me, if we don't get a divorce, she said, your name is going to be mud all over every town, mud, which meant she was going to be with everybody. She was going to go out on her own, whatever. So I thought to myself, and I thought, my mom and dad gave me my last name. And hang on, guys. Okay, guys, I was talking to one of our church friends, and I was trying to remember where I left off. We got a divorce, and I thought, well, I'll give her a divorce because my mom and dad gave me my last name. I was trying to keep our last name, in a high standing instead of being talked about all over town. So I got divorced, and I told my mom and dad that we were getting a divorce. And like I said, we'd been married almost 3 years. Kind of a rough almost 3 years. And I don't think she ever loved me anyway. I think she just gotten out of high school recently, and I think she was just wanting to get out on her own, and I think I was her ticket. I was the lucky or unlucky guy that just happened to see her standing there crying. I should have asked why she got fired, but I didn't. But anyway, so we got divorced, and I told my mom and dad, I said I won't never be able to remarry again. I said, I'm just going to be single all my life. I said, because of the vows I said on our wedding day, I'll always be true, never, do this, do that. Y'all know how it is. But my mom and dad finally convinced me that it was okay to remarry. If I was to find somebody, but I wasn't really looking for anybody. So for a long time, but I did remarry. That'll be the next video if you're interested in watching it and what happened to us. It's always as I've said in my very first video of friends, what friends, and I'll try to leave a link in the video of it so you can watch that video of what happened between myself and my second wife. Boy, she really gave me a lot. Unbelievable, with my friends too. So anyway, my first wife and Tony, I'll say, as I said, they didn't make it very long. And it's funny, it wasn't, when I finally did meet somebody else finally, which became my second wife, she found out I was getting married. And she called me from a payphone, and she said, Jimmy, she said, she told me where she was at, what payphone. She said, I just thought I'd give you a holler. She said, I heard you're getting remarried. I said, yeah, I'm getting remarried. And she said, well, I'm down here at this payphone. She said, I just thought maybe you and I could go out to eat. And I said, no, I don't think so. No. She said, you don't want to go out to eat with me? And I said, no, I do not. ever want to go out to eat with you. I seen your true colors, and I seen how you are. And I said, I don't believe you ever loved me to begin with, because you know, guys, I don't know what it is. You know, you hear about things on, you know, women looking for men. They look for men that's working. I was working all the time. And you look for men that are faithful. I was faithful. And you look, you know, I kept the yard mowed. Her car was always spotless. I mean, she never drove around in a dirty car. You know, when she wasn't at home working, when I was working second shift, I was vacuuming, you know, cleaning the house. You know, she had it made. I mean, it wasn't like she was living in a dump or nothing. I mean, it was clean. You know, I kept the bills paid. You know, I don't know, guys. I can't figure some women out, but I got a good wife now, Mrs. PIB. But it's all in my life. You know, it's always cars are involved. Cars or trucks, either getting worked on or something, or and most of the time when there's stepping out going on, it's my friends. It's with my friends, and I mean, and most of the time I'm feeding them. My first wife, my second wife, I was feeding both their boyfriends. You know, I don't know. It's crazy. Stay tuned for the next video. I'll talk about how I met my second wife. It's pretty interesting, I think, and what went on there. So I'm sure I'm leaving out a bunch, but I probably need to end this video. Let me know if you like this. Don't forget to look in the description, and I'll leave you a link to the other video I made, and it's a very popular video. A lot of people can relate to it, but you know, I try to see good in everybody. I try to trust everybody. But guys, you know, like I said, my mother told me many times in my life, she said, Jimmy, you're gullible. And to me, that's another way of saying stupid, dumb, you know, stupid or dumb or both. So I guess I fit into that category. But my name is Jimmy, and I'm the last one left of my family. My younger brother and sister have been gone, and you know, I thought I'd go way before them. It didn't happen. The Lord's got a purpose for me, and He's got a purpose for you. And I hope that you will continue to, if you're in the same situation I've been in or still in that situation, go out and meet other people. Everybody's not bad. Everybody's just not. It's just I ran into all the bad people I needed to meet in my life at the first part of my life, so to speak. And it took me years to go through them. But get out there and enjoy people, make friends. There's some good men and women out there. You just got to be more selective, I guess. Sorry for the traffic. Let me know what you think. My name's Jimmy. You're watching Prime at His Best. Let me know if you like these type videos. I'll try to do more of them. I'm trying to be encouraging for those that have left comments on the other video. When you look in the description and click on the video, read the comments. There's a lot of people that's been in the same shape I'm in, or was in. And, you know, it's pretty, it's heartbreaking, and it hurts. It hurts terribly. The worst kind of hurt. To me, getting a divorce is like it's worse than death. I've always compared it to, if somebody that I love has died, I can go visit them at any time. When you're divorced and you still love them, you see them with other people, and it's just like a knife that is just twisted, you know. But I've overcome all that. You can too. Please like and subscribe to Prime at His Best. Let me know if you enjoy these videos. My name is Jimmy, and I'm also on Instagram, Prime at His Best, Facebook, Prime at His Best. I got a second YouTube channel called Man on a Budget. I'm on Instagram, Man on a Budget 1, and Facebook, Man on a Budget. And I hope that you will subscribe. And I've got lots of stories, guys, stuff I've never told before. Maybe you might enjoy it. You know, if you subscribe, you won't miss nothing. Please give me a thumbs up. It would help my videos. YouTube will push them out a little bit further, and other folks can watch them too, and it helps me out, okay? I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for giving me your time to watch this video. And God bless each and every one of y'all. The Lord has changed my life. The Lord has changed my life. The Lord has picked me up. He has absolutely picked me up and carried me. Because, guys, I was at the end of my rope. I was at the end of my rope. And it's one of those situations, I don't care how bad you're hurting or how bad you're sick, you've got to go to work because you've got bills to pay. I didn't miss work. But I don't mind to tell you, I'd go sneak off somewhere and just cry. I was hurting so bad. But I hung in there, and the Lord picked me up and carried me many a day. He will you too. God bless y'all. Thanks for watching, and like I said, like and subscribe. You won't miss nothing. Catch y'all in the next one. I hope to see you then. I love you. God bless you. Hang in there, guys. See y'all later.